Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Indeed, it's a great day today, and I would, on behalf of TMI community, I welcome you all to this excellent session by Professor Bala. Uh, Today, Professor Bala is going to deliver a talk on. Give me a moment. Sorry for this. There are a couple of people who are trying to join, so I continue to get the pop-up. So, Professor Bala is going to deliver a talk on technological innovations for MSME in India, need, status, and challenges. And indeed, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Bala. Professor Bala is an economist specializing in industrial economics. His academic profile can be accessed on the IISc website. He's got almost 3 decades of experience. He's primarily an empirical.
Chintan, maybe
Yes.
I will introduce myself briefly.
Oh, sure,
That
definitely.
will make me comfortable.
Oh, okay, done.
That's
Sure,
fine? Yeah.
sure, sir.
Yeah. Good evening to all of you. My name is Balasubrahmanya. I have been working in the Institute of Science in the Department of Management Studies for the last 25 years almost. My background is economics. I did PhD at the Institute for Social and Economics in Bangalore. Prior to that, I obtained MA in economics from Mysore University. Now, prior to joining the IISc, I had worked in Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry as an economist for 6 years. Even there, I looked at mainly small-scale industries and policy issues relating to small-scale industries. After joining IISc, I started, of course, teaching managerial economics and macroeconomics for the postgraduate students and research students. But I continued my research covering, mainly focusing on industrial economics, covering small and medium enterprises till 2010. But after 2010, because of my exposure to startups, I started working on tech startups, their ecosystem, and other related issues. But my interest in small and medium enterprises continued. Now, it is with that backdrop that I would like to focus on my presentation. I would like to share my slides. Chintan, I'm not able to see the scope for sharing my slides. Can you help me?
Yes, sir. So you will have to, in the bottom ribbon, towards the right side, you will see present now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let me go ahead and share my presentation. That is a window. Yeah. I hope you are able to see, all of you.
Yes, we are able to see now.
Sir. Yeah. Medium enterprise sector. Small and medium enterprises, globally, they are known as SMEs. Chintan, of course, has titled it as MSMEs because that is more relevant in the Indian context. But I have titled it as SMEs. And they are global because they are globally known as SMEs. Now, SMEs, they occupy a strategic position in the economic structure of our country, as well as in the economic policies of our country. Now, they form a formidable force in the economic structure because they account for more than 1/4 of the total workforce currently. And they account for almost 45% of the industrial production and almost 49% of the total exports. And in terms of GDP, they account for almost 30% of the national income. And these are government statistics and these are recent figures. But if you observe closely, they have been an important source of employment, not only for the skilled and semi-skilled, but more importantly for the unskilled labor force of our country, ever since our country attained independence in 1947. Now, it is precisely for this reason that they occupy a very prominent place in the economic policies of our country, right from the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948. But since 1991, we have been having exclusive policies for the sector, indicating that the attraction of the sector to the policymakers has improved to that extent. But the point is, now constraints with respect to production and operations, constraints with respect to the accessibility of finance, constraints in terms of developing markets, and constraints in terms of obtaining human resources. That means this particular sector is facing challenges on almost every functional area of management. And this has been brought out clearly by expert committee after expert committee constituted by the Government of India since independence. That means the challenges have survived, constraints have remained, despite Government of India formulating newer institutions and implementing newer policies. Now, it is in this context that I would like to drive your attention towards the role of technological innovation in promoting SMEs. Now, it is with this brief backdrop that I would like to go ahead. Now, technological innovation, because it has been assuming increasing importance as a means of enhancing competitiveness among nations across the world. Now, why it is attracting more and more attention? Because of the increasing trends of globalization. Now, due to the increasing trends of globalization, competition is increasing between nations. And it is to cope with this intensifying competition that innovation is increasingly adopted as a weapon to enhance competitiveness. And if one observes historically, it is the industrial sector, more precisely manufacturing industry sector, which has been transforming country after country ever since the Industrial Revolution through the innovation of products, to the innovation of products repeatedly. So that means it is the manufacturing sector which has been at the forefront of accelerating economic growth by means of transforming economic structure of nations through innovation and productivity growth. That is because that means the stimuli for innovation and productivity growth led competitiveness emerges from the manufacturing industry. Now, among the manufacturing firms of different sizes, SMEs assume significance because they are the outcomes of innovation as well as they are the sources of innovation. Or new SMEs. At the same time, newly created SMEs, they do generate innovations, and that is how they are the sources of innovations. Now, before confining my focus exclusively to technological innovation, I would like to deal with two concepts which I have mentioned here. One is globalization, another one is competitiveness. Now, my reference to these two concepts and my attempt to define both of them will definitely generate more questions, and I would like it. So let me try to define globalization in the way I understand from whatever literature that I have read. Now, what is globalization? Globalization, as a concept, started getting into circulation more and more since 1990. Now, in this context, I would like to define what do we mean by perfect globalization. Perfect globalization would be perfect movement of factor inputs and factor output between countries. Now, the question is, what causes we be able to reach perfect globalization? Now, are we moving towards perfect globalization, or will we be able to reach perfect globalization? My answer is no. Now, why we are not able to reach perfect globalization? Now, we need to understand what has caused the increasing trends of globalization. Now, globalization, I have already mentioned, it is increasing movement of factor inputs and factor output. Whereas perfect globalization would mean perfect movement of factor inputs and perfect movement of factor output. Now, let us look at the causes. I have mentioned here 4 factors which are contributing to the intensifying trends of globalization. The first one is the foreign direct investment laws. Now, FDI laws have been substantially liberalized since 1990 across a growing number of developing and erstwhile socialistic countries, as mentioned or as recorded by the UNCTAD. On an average, more than 100 countries have been repeatedly liberalizing their foreign investment laws, which actually gives a fillip to the movement, fillip to the inflow and outflow of foreign direct investment, inflow into primarily into developing countries. Now, foreign direct investment, it's a package. It's a package because when it flows in, better technology flows in, more capital flows in, and better managerial expertise flows in. So this is one thing. That means liberalization of foreign investment inflows, liberalization of foreign investment laws is encouraging the movement of capital, entrepreneurship, and technology. And then trade has been substantially liberalized since 1990, particularly after the formation of World Trade Organization. The so-called tariff and non-tariff barriers, or what is mentioned as quantitative and non-quantitative restrictions, they have been liberalized substantially, facilitating movement of goods and services between countries. Now, please note, when we say factor inputs, it also should include labor and land. Now, these 2 factors are confined to capital, entrepreneurship, technology, and goods and services. Let us look at the 3rd factor. This is what is called cross-national convergence of consumer demand. When the level of income goes up in very diverse countries across the world. Now, educational and trade meets between countries, what is argued is consumer demand across countries, they converge, and when they converge, they give scope for more FDI on the one hand, and they give for mass production and more trade between countries on the other. Now, but please note, of course, cross-national convergence of consumer demand has also, at least to some extent, facilitated labor movement between countries. But it is the ICT revolution which has given a new dimension to factor input movement and factor output movement. Now, ICT revolution also has facilitated labor, may not be to the extent of capital, entrepreneurship, and technology, but definitely it has facilitated labor movement between countries. But please note, land will not move, but land ownership can move. If land ownership has to move perfectly, then every country has to adopt what we call capital account convertibility. But as we know, labor movement is not to the liking of developed countries. Therefore, perfect labor movement is unlikely to emerge. And land movement, developing countries will not favor land ownership movement between countries. Therefore, we are unlikely to reach the stage of perfect globalization. But then, as I said, the overall trends of globalization, which are getting intensified, are characterized by more FDI flow and more trade flow. Now, this ICT revolution also has another dimension. This has facilitated multinational corporations to adopt what is called complex integration strategy. MNCs, they initially used to adopt mostly standalone strategy, which is actually characterized by setting up of fully owned subsidiaries in different countries. Then this is followed by simple integration strategy, where MNCs started locating their production units in different countries, mainly to take advantage of cheap labor in the developing countries. Now, standalone strategy mainly meant for markets meant for meeting their market seeking investments, whereas simple integration strategy was meant for taking advantage of the what I can say, better labor resources, more labor resources located in developing countries. But complex integration strategy has been increasingly adopted by MNCs mainly to take advantage of, mainly to improve their efficiency. We make complex integration strategy has led to what is called global production networks of multinational corporations. Now, certain business experts have defined it as global factory. What it means is value chain is spread across the globe. That part of the value chain will be located in that country where it can be carried out most cost efficiently. As a result, whether it is, I would say, R&D, whether it is production, whether it is software development, whether it is marketing, so they're all spread all over the globe. As a result, no single entity is independent by itself. All the different parts of the value chain are closely integrated, but they are globally spread. Now, this actually also gives scope for trade between these MNCs units or MNCs globally spread units and local enterprises. That has a significance. I'll come to that later. But this globalization, increasing trends of globalization, has led to increasing competition between countries and between industries. And that is why it is to counter or to cope with these increasing trends of globalization, increasing trends of competition between countries, that countries decided to focus on innovation, because that is the means of enhancing competitiveness. Then let me define what do we mean by competitiveness. In simple words, we all know competitiveness in simple words means an ability to do better than others, or an ability to outperform others. Now, this is true for an individual, this is true for a firm, this is true for an industry at large, this is true for nations. A competitive nation will be able to do better. That means it will be able to achieve higher economic growth. So national competitiveness.
Still you are on the first slide. Is that okay?
No, I am on the fourth slide.
No, sir, we are not able to see. So you'll have to go to the slideshow and then change the slide,
Any
I guess.
problem? See, I
Yes.
see.
Yes, sir, we are not able to see the transition actually.
Oh, I see. So
We are just looking at the first slide only.
I am on the fourth slide now.
No, sir. If you can just.
No. Are you able to see now?
Now it is coming up. Yes, now it is coming up.
See, this is the first slide.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now let us see. I am on the second slide. Are you able to see?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, thereafter, I moved to the third slide where I talked about globalization.
That is where many of us were wondering, because what we are talking and what we are seeing. So now you can continue the talk with the relevant slides, sir.
Yeah. So
Okay,
I will not deal with it again. I have mentioned clearly that perfect globalization, according to me, would mean perfect movement of factor inputs and factor output between countries. Now, factor inputs, we say land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, and some economists also make reference to technology. So I have mentioned here 5 factors, and factor output goods and services. So FDI, substantial liberalization of FDI laws adopted by increasing number of countries primarily facilitated movement of capital, entrepreneurship, and technology, whereas trade liberalization, that is removal of quantitative and non-quantitative restrictions, or if not removal, slashing down the quantity. Can I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, sir.
So trade liberalization has led to a greater movement of goods and services between countries. The third one, I made reference to cross-national convergence of consumer demand, which gave a fillip to goods movement, as well as factor inputs movement in the form of capital and potential technology. Whereas it is the ICT revolution which has facilitated even labor movement apart from encouraging FDI and trade between countries. Now, it is this globalization-led competition now which prompted countries to look for means of enhancing competitiveness. Then what is competitiveness? Competitiveness, yes, I briefly mentioned here. National competitiveness refers to a nation-state's ability to produce, distribute, and service goods in the international economy in competition with goods and services produced in other countries, and to do so in a way that earns a rising standard of living for its people. So competitiveness should be understood as the ability of enterprises, industries, regions, and nations to generate while being and remaining exposed to international competition. Competitiveness is critical if a firm has to achieve long-term economic prosperity and growth. Okay, a globally competitive economy will be able to create increasing employment opportunities, encourage domestic and foreign direct investment, and improve its balance of payments. In other words, in the global economy, a competitive economy will be able to do better and better while generating more employment within the economy, more income within the economy. So another characteristic of a competitive economy is its ability to boost its intellectual capital and innovativeness, push its technological frontiers, and drive growth in demand for skilled workers and scientists. Now, it is with this understanding that I have moved to the next slide. I hope all of you are able to see. Now, I'm raising 5 questions. 1, what is technological innovation? 2, what is the role and significance of technological innovation at the national level, at an industry? I raise here is what factors determine technological innovation. Then I move on to the SME side, so to understand what are the prerequisites for SME technological innovations, how do technological innovations benefit SMEs? And the last question, how to promote technological innovations in Indian SMEs, because that is the key question that I would like to deal with. I will move to the next slide now. Now, technological innovation, it's a very complex concept according to academicians. It is very difficult to answer it satisfactorily because it is multidimensional and it is almost impossible to measure directly according to Hansen. But one of the most well-quoted definitions is that of OECD, which says a technological product innovation is the implementation or commercialization of a product with improved performance characteristics, such as to deliver objectively new or improved services to the consumer. A technological process innovation is the implementation or adoption of new or significantly improved production or delivery methods. It may involve changes in equipment, human resources, working methods, or a combination of these. It's one of the very well-known definition of technological innovation. However, in the context of developing countries, a diluted by Cooper, second one is given by Michelka. Now, I am moving to the next slide. Now, according to the United Nations Institute for New Technologies, which has become UNU Merit now, innovation includes purchase of new machinery and equipment as well as licensing. Perhaps this is the most diluted version of technological innovation. But in the Indian context, we do not have an official definition of innovation. But I would like to make reference to the definition given by National Knowledge Commission. This definition was adopted by NKC for a nationwide survey conducted by it, and the report was published subsequently. It defined innovation again in a general manner because it did not confine itself to technological innovation. Rather, it included organizational innovation as well as marketing innovation. So innovation is defined as a process by which varying degrees of measurable value enhancement is planned and achieved in any commercial activity, and this process may be breakthrough or incremental, and it may occur systematically or sporadically in a company, and it may be achieved by introducing new or improved goods and services, and or implementing new or improved operational processes, and or implementing new or improved organizational or managerial processes. There is no uniformity or uniformly accepted definition. Now, but for my study, I carried out a study mainly to understand the influence of technological innovations on the gradual growth of small and medium enterprises in Bangalore, funded by the Department of Science and Technology. We define technological product and process innovations as the development of new products and processes and significant improvements in products and processes by firms which can be altogether new to the industry or only to the firm concerned. So you may also observe here, even I have adopted a slightly diluted version of technological innovation. But if you look at empirical studies, there are now different kinds, but two most notable classifications are relevant. One, by novelty, radical innovations and incremental innovations. Radical innovations actually refer to innovations which result in new products or new processes which are new to the world as a whole, whereas incremental innovations are only new to the form, and they generate mostly in response to consumer demand or customer direction. And second is categories by type, that is product innovations and process innovations. Now we need to I will actually take into account these two classifications for my further discussion. Now I am going to the next slide. In case it gets stuck, let me know. Now, why technological innovation is important? Now, historically, in other words, traditional economic theories, they attributed to the better competitiveness of nations primarily because of the resources that they had. So that means a country's competitiveness, several factors contribute. It could be labor and material cost, energy cost, quality and quantity of economic infrastructure, business environment, quality of human resources, regulatory framework, government policies, etc. But then, as we all know, Japan's economic miracle actually led a blow to the traditional economic theories, which argue that it is only that competitive advantage owing to resource endowments that nations had better competitiveness. but Japanese proved that it is due to technological innovation achieved by them, which made the country rich, which made the country more competitive. Now, this brings out that technological innovation and competitiveness, they have a dynamic and mutual relationship, because innovation improves competitiveness and competitiveness actually enables further innovation. So by virtue of its relationship with competitiveness, technological innovation emerges as a major factor promoting competitiveness and economic growth. Now, that is why many economists have argued that it's a critical driver of increasing productivity and competitiveness. According to Solow, the Nobel laureate, he said it is the ultimate source of productivity growth, and it is the only proven way for economists to consistently get ahead. So this brings out that technological innovation is not an end in itself, but a means to productivity growth. It's a means to achieve higher living standards, and it's a means to achieve higher level of competitiveness. That is why it's a necessary core competence to remain competitive in the global landscape. I'm going to the next slide. Now, going further, according to the Council on Competitiveness of the US, it stated in one of its reports that improvements in national innovative capacity are not a zero-sum game. It is not that a country has to become more innovative at the cost of some other nation. Rather, the report argued that many nations can improve innovation capacity simultaneously, and they will enjoy by reaping benefits out of it in the form of growth in productivity, in the form of improved standard of living. Now, improving innovativeness in one country can also benefit other countries through the diffusion of knowledge and products. Now, in this context, we may understand that the co-vaccine developed in India is benefiting several third world countries as well as first world countries through our, let us say, co-vaccine diplomacy. Now, but it's also important to note that it is not that every country has to be innovative in every sector. Rather, as we understand, As we all know, that countries develop innovativeness and gain an upper hand in the global market with respect industry level. Innovation can induce competition, and competition can further induce innovation, thereby raising overall industry competitiveness. Now, but then innovation always happens at the firm level. So at a firm level, technological innovation is unavoidable if a firm wants to develop and maintain a competitive edge and or gain entry into new markets. Now, there is also another reason why technological innovation is important, because we economists say that it is the production technology or production function. Now, it has a certain limit for output generation, but then that limit can be crossed by technological innovation. So for any given production technique, there are ultimate limits on the productivity advances which can be attained by better education training, improved management, economies of scale, and so forth. But these limits can be transcended only through technological innovations. That is why if a country has to achieve continued growth in productivity, it would call for continued technological innovations. Now, sustained increases in productivity determines what are the determinants of technological innovation? Because we have stated here that innovation takes place at the firm level. Then the issue is why at all a firm should undertake technological innovations. Now, within the very broad, complex literature, there are two major approaches to describe the successful emergence of technological innovations historically. They are broadly classified as science post laid emphasis on the elements of original research and invention, and they tended to neglect or belittle the role of the market in innovation. So science push theories. Science push theories now prevailed in the 1950s and the 1960s. But soon thereafter, economists, they started claiming that they stressed on the demand side. Necessity is the mother of invention. They said unless and until there is market demand, innovation is unlikely to succeed. Any technological innovation is unlikely to succeed. So demand pull theories, they emerged and prevailed in the 1950s and 1970s. But the issue is, essentially, these are the two approaches. They are complementary to each other and they are not mutually exclusive. So that is why Shumukla is an economist. He said innovation is a two-sided or coupling activity. And he compared it to the blades of two blades of a pair of scissors, but it gained circulation only from the 70s onwards. And I move to the next one, where I now present this figure just to exemplify the argument of Shumukla, where he said if a successful innovation has to emerge, there needs to be appropriate technological capability and there needs to be the existence of appropriate market demand. And both have to be there if innovation has to emerge successfully. Now, technological knowledge is important because it is only when a firm has adequate technological capability, it will be able to ideate, it will be able to go forward towards proof of concept, prototype development, minimum viable product, and launch the product. But if it has to launch the product in the market, simultaneously it needs to understand its market viability, market acceptance. So that thus technological innovation, it's a matching or combining process, and the matching takes place in the minds of entrepreneurs. So the matching, but it's important to understand this matching process is not a one-off event. It's a far more continuous process during the whole of the experimental development work and introduction of the new product or process. And it is the unique characteristic of the entrepreneur that he or she is able to recognize both the technical feasibility on the one hand and demand on the other. And it is that entrepreneur who is willing to make an investment decision based on this insight. And not all entrepreneurs are in a position to do that. That is why not all firms are innovative. There are other constraints, of course, and let me move ahead. Now, these two approaches have been recognized well and recorded in literature. So what I mean is demand-full and technology push theories, or demand-full and science push theories. In fact, one set of authors, more recently, they looked at more than 100 important research papers that have emerged in the 1990s and 2000s, which dealt with the sources of innovation. Now, in this paper, the authors have brought out clearly three main findings. What is that? Number one, they highlighted the role of both technology and demand as the sources of innovation. In other words, they substantiated that both technological capability and market demand are needed if innovation has to emerge successfully. It illustrated how competencies enable firms to match technology with demand and capitalize on technology and demand as the sources of innovation. So unveiled a distinction between external and internal sources of innovation. The sources of innovation can be purely external or internally generated competences that enable the firm to integrate external knowledge within its boundaries. So it's important to note here that science and technology, they only provide the trajectories of innovation. But demand is a crucial component in order to direct the trajectory towards the right economic values. Unless and until that is done, innovation is unlikely to be successful. Now, this would hold good for technology startups, for manufacturing industry startups, as well as for manufacturing SMEs. I'm going to the next slide. Then the issue is what facilitates that kind of interaction between technological capability and market demand, or what nurtures demand pull, technology push interactions. So what our economists have argued that it is the regional innovation system, or it is the vibrancy of the Now, I would like to make a state here that regional innovation system, as a concept, gained currency in response to the criticism leveled against the national innovation system approach. The major drawback with the national innovation system approach is that it assumes homogeneity within countries. Maybe in terms of economic growth, in terms of poverty, in terms of employment levels, in terms of R&D intensity. Like you take any economic variable, regions differ. And it is to address this particular concern that regional innovation system concept has been promoted, and which actually got wider currency subsequently. So what is a regional innovation system? A regional innovation system usually consists of a set of private, semi-public, and public organizations, and they interact within an institutional framework. Now, this framework supports the generation, exploitation, and dissemination of knowledge, and thus supports innovative activities on a regional level. Now, it is the regional innovation system which drives the entrepreneurial ecosystem for demand-full technology push interactions for generating innovations, either from existing enterprises or they create new enterprises in the regions. I'm moving to the next slide where I describe a figure. This is how Cook and Piccaluga have now defined a regional innovation system. You may note here that on the one side there are universities, on the other side there are business enterprises, and they interact with one another. This interaction is facilitated by a regional government, by a regional culture, and local innovation assets. Local innovation assets in the form of venture capitalists, in the form of R&D institutions, in the form of human resource providers, in the form of physical infrastructure. They all facilitate this. Now, it is the universities which actually interact with the external world as well by learning from the outside world, as well as by disseminating its learning to the outside world. They interact with the business enterprises. Business enterprises, they interact with the external world through exports and exports as well as imports and regional and foreign direct investment. FDI may flow in, FDI may flow out. Now, universities generate knowledge and they actually transfer technology to the business enterprises. Now, this happens in a regional innovation system framework. In other words, the more vibrant a regional innovation system is, there will be more interaction between entities here, and that will generate innovations, that will generate new enterprises. Now let me go ahead and now let me focus on more on SMEs. If regional innovation system can facilitate innovations, why is it that we need to focus more on SMEs? Because among firms of different sizes in the manufacturing industry, which is virtually at the forefront of generating innovations, SMEs, including startups, they have the unrealized potential for innovation as argued by academicians. Why is it they have the unrealized potential for innovation? Because by their very nature, they are flexible, they are better adaptive, they are receptive, they have efficient internal communication, they have simple organizational structure, and they have effective decision making. They have various characteristics which actually are more apt for undertaking innovations. And empirical research in the context of various countries, they have brought out that a number of SMEs in wide varieties of sectors across countries do engage in technological innovations, which play a crucial role in enhancing their economic performance. Now, small firms, they are considered more efficient at performing innovations, and they are in fact the major source of innovations. That is why small firms are often called, they are the seedbed of innovations. Now, and let me also make reference to some statistics here to understand the importance of SMEs in the global arena. Now, according to Longnecker and others, they have recorded it in one of their books that many of the new technologies and industries that are seen critical to US economic growth are closely identified with small and medium enterprises. According to them, about 50% of all innovations and 90% of all radical innovations in the US since World War II have emerged from new small firms. So that is the significance that they have in the US context. Now, in the global arena, SMEs by number dominate the world business. This is true in the context of India as well. Now, although precise up-to-date data are difficult to obtain, estimates suggest that more than 95% of the enterprises across the world are small and medium enterprises. So numerically, it's a very strong sector. Now, they account for approximately 60% of the private sector employment and 52% of the private sector value added in the global economy. In countries like Japan, SMEs account for more than 55% of the GDP. Now, SME contribution to GDP varied from 16% in low-income countries, about 30% in India, and 51% in high-income countries. So, however, the ability and innovative capacity of SMEs, it varies widely. It varies widely in terms of sector, in terms of size, because SMEs within the sector, of course, size varies, and in terms of resources, in terms of their focus, in terms of their source of origin, in terms of regions, and in terms of the environment in which they operate. Having said that, now I'm moving to the next slide. Not all SMEs are innovative. This is true even in the developed world. Now, why? Again, academic literature throws light on this. One major reason is a significant chunk of SMEs, they are hardly aware of technological innovations. They are hardly aware of the benefits that technological innovation would bring them. And even if they're aware, they have different kinds of constraints. Several studies, empirical studies, have thrown light on that. They have constraints on the technology front, they have constraints on the managerial front, they have constraints on the finance front, they have constraints in terms of employee skills, in terms of knowledge, in terms of market ability. All those constraints are there. As a result, many of them will have neither motivation nor adequate capability to undertake innovations. So in other words, the technological capability itself, they lack, so they give up there itself. But then one method of overcoming the inadequate expertise and shortage of resources is to complement internal strength with external support. A considerable proportion of SMEs, they will not be in a position to scout for, identify, access, and exploit appropriate external advice and support. Now, further, a firm lacking internal capability will not be able to link up with its customers and perceive the market needs appropriately. Please note, in the context of SMEs, it is the customers, particularly large firm customers, who actually enable them to understand the market better. And in some contexts, they understand the market in such a way that they penetrate the international market as well. Maybe while discussing certain issues, I will make reference to some of my observations in the Bangalore context. Now, as a result, a considerable proportion of SMEs, they lack both technical strength and marketing perception, which are the two much needed virtues for carrying out innovations. Such SMEs will not be able to obtain and make use of external support either. So I'm moving to the next slide. Now, but however, there are a good number of SMEs which do have the threshold level of internal strength. And it is such SMEs which supplement their internal resources by seeking, obtaining, and exploiting external support. What kind of external support? Broadly in literature, there are two kinds of external supports that SMEs seek and obtain. One is vertical linkages, that refers to relationship with suppliers and customers. Second one is horizontal linkages. Horizontal linkages may emerge with respect to SME promotion agencies or research institutes or SMEs of the same sector. Now, both are important. Now, vertical linkages, well, Japan itself tells stories about how industrial subcontracting has enabled its manufacturing SMEs to gain competitiveness to such an extent that by the late 80s, SMEs became imperative for large enterprises for their own survival. So, but how did it happen? These vertical linkages which large firms and SMEs established enabled SMEs to gain on multiple fronts. So that initially they were only providing marketing support, but later large firms started providing them support in terms of inputs, in terms of technical support, in terms of technology, in terms of HR training, in terms of finance, so in terms of production and operations. So the very marketing support which they obtained as the subcontractors of large firms enabled them to diversify this support to other fronts as well. So that enabled them to, this is true, now this has been replicated in Southeast Asian countries as well. Southeast Asian countries, particularly Singapore, Malaysia, to some extent even Thailand, Indonesia, SMEs gained there substantially because of the vertical linkages that they developed with the Japanese multinational corporations which are located there. So therefore, cultivating relationship with a small number of customers pays. I'm going to the next slide. Now, the other one is horizontal linkages. Now, horizontal linkages, sometimes they do not emerge on their own. But in some countries, particularly in developed countries, they emerge on their own. If they do not emerge, then some kind of policy direction or policy inducement is necessary. So SMEs in industries which do not offer scope for interfirm linkages with large firms, particularly, let's say, consumer goods industries, they seek external support from government-promoted SME institutions or research institutes due to policy encouragement. SME institutions often provide them technical inputs or information on sources of better technology and at times assist in external technology acquisition. Research institutes, they either collaborate or undertake innovation for SMEs in their labs. In fact, in our own institute, there are several professors who have collaborations with SMEs of Pune Industrial Estate, and Pune Industrial Estate, some of the SMEs are doing good primarily because of the support that they have obtained from IISc professors, because I have the fieldwork
is going to have a more advantage over it. Here's the meaning of
so in some other context, SMEs, due to sheer competitive pressure, they might seek network cooperation with similar SMEs of the same industry in the same cluster or city to undertake joint R&D innovations. Now, when they cooperate this way, it enables them to overcome what is termed as scale deficiency. So they are able to overcome scale deficiency and they are able to reach a wider market. Now, interactions between SMEs facilitate employees interaction, leading to sharing of information or swapping of tasks between them. Even sharing of orders or swapping of orders, all those things can happen. An aggressive SME or a dynamic, ambitious SME might pursue both vertical and horizontal cooperation simultaneously to its advantage. I'm moving to the next slide. Now, what benefits innovative SMEs obtain? First, they'll be able to sell a larger share of innovative products out of their total sales. In other words, innovative products would account for a larger and larger share of their total sales. They'll be able to penetrate the market effectively. Now, as a result, their sales turnover will grow. In other words, they'll be able to achieve a higher growth rate. Now, this substantiates the contention that has been observed again in the context of the US, that new product development and improving existing products are important means of firm growth strategies for small firms in the US. Now, many of the innovative SMEs are also able to enter the international market in the process. There are umpteen number of evidences in the context of Karnataka, particularly Bangalore, in some contexts Mysore as well. Innovative SMEs, they were able to penetrate the international market better, more easily. Thus, innovation, it helps SMEs in different ways. It enables them to reduce costs, to enable them achieve quality improvement, product improvement, new product development, achieve internationalization, and all leading to sales growth. But one thing needs to be understood here, that they are not good at protecting their innovations. Patenting culture is largely absent among SMEs across the world, and it is more so in India. We will discuss this issue if necessary later to throw more light. Now I'm moving to the next slide. So this is how I would like to summarize the key issues. So SMEs, they must be encouraged with the help of a vibrant regional innovation system to develop networks. For the time being, I call them only interlinkages. Now, interlinkages in the form of vertical linkages with suppliers and or customers, and horizontal linkages in the form of linkages with SMEs in the same sector, or research institutes like IISc, or engineering education institutes, or even SME promoting agencies. Now, such linkages itself or themselves will enable them to achieve better economic performance and enhanced competitiveness. Or interlinkages can also lead to internationalization and achieve better economic performance. Or more importantly, interlinkages will enable them to innovate and achieve better economic performance, or innovation will enable them to reach the international market and thereby achieve better economic performance and enhanced competitiveness. Now I'm into the next slide. If that is the issue, what policy implications we have for innovation promotion in Indian SMEs. Now SMEs, they occupy a place, a strategic significance, a place of strategic significance in the economy, as I have stated already, because numerically it's such a large constituency comprising more than 63 million enterprises all over. And they generate more than 110 million employment. They are the second largest employer after agriculture. And they account for more than 25% of the total workforce of the country. And they, in terms of GDP, more than 30% of the GDP emerges from the SME sector. And almost one half of the total exports is contributed by the SME sector. And the sector is so diversified, they generate more than 6,000 products ranging from traditional to most sophisticated industrial goods and services. That is why we can consider our SME sector as the rich potential seedbed for promoting technological innovations. But innovation is widely absent in the SME sector as of now, which implies that there is a low innovation capacity existing in Indian SMEs. Now, there is statistical evidence. First statistical evidence that we got for the country as a whole was by the National Knowledge Commission in 2007. As I said, they carried out a nationwide study and they found out that the innovation is largely incremental and radical innovation was widely absent. But I would like to make reference to a more recent study conducted by the National Institute of Science, Technology, Development Studies. This is NATH and others. Now they actually did a more systematic study and they found out that radical innovations are virtually negligible, because those who claimed to have undertaken product innovations accounted for 32% of the innovative firms, which amounted to about 11% of the total surveyed firms, but predominant types of innovation are new to the firm category. They are not new to the industry or new to the world. So this substantiates that radical innovation is largely absent in Indian SMEs. That is, so it is in this context that I have a particular, I'm going to the next slide. Now, along with, that is why I say here that along with the micro, small and medium enterprise census, it is essential to probe and record the nature and intensity of innovations carried out by SMEs across the country periodically. Now, it's also important to propagate the virtues of innovations through revamping our district industry center. So I'm introducing DICs for the first time. In fact, Government of India has been promoting SMEs through a dual strategy. That is, one, introducing more and more schemes and incentives for SMEs, two, establishing more and more institutions. These district industry centers, when they were created in 1977 for the first time, they were meant for providing all-round support, including technical support to SMEs under a single umbrella for that particular district. However, over the period of time, DICs virtually have become defunct. They do not serve any significant purpose as such. But it is high time now to revamp the district industry center to reorient the government machinery towards promoting innovation in the SME sector as a whole. So the champion innovators in the sector need to be identified. So, and encourage them to communicate the need and essentials of innovations. In other words, a motivated few should motivate the rest. So this, of course, will automatically rise to one question. I'm not posing that question. In case that question arises, we'll deal with that later. Now, second issue is the attitude of industries and commerce must be involved in promoting vertical and large firms, SME associations, and promote vertical linkages. That in turn has multiple benefits, as we have argued earlier. Now, inter-firm collaboration portal needs to be set up, because providing all the required information on intermediate product manufacturers and consumer product suppliers is important, so that a large firm which is in need of a product might all of a sudden contact a SME, and once such a relationship gets established, that may continue for the benefit of the SMEs. And also for registration of both buyers and sellers. And also, it should provide details about the requirements for inter-firm collaboration in terms of prerequisites. And it should also propagate possible benefits arising out of such a collaboration. And it should also reveal success stories of inter-firm collaboration from India and abroad, so that any SME owner who visits this portal will be tempted to develop inter-firm relationship for its own benefit in the subsequent period. So this portal should be widely publicized through district industry centers, SME associations, chambers of industries and commerce, media, etc. I mean, move to the next slide. So promote horizontal collaboration involving industry institute interactions. Now the vast network of, now this is important, now how to do it? See, one method is the vast network of engineering institutions must be encouraged to move closer to local SMEs through collaborative work for innovations. Now, it is in this regard that my suggestion is engineering student projects should be linked to local SME technical or techno-managerial problems for ascertaining cost-effective solutions with the help of faculty guides. Now, the prompting factor here in this context is our own institute, where we have a Department of Electronic Systems and Engineering, where every student is obliged to bring a live problem from the industry and give an academic touch to it, solve that problem, and present it to the faculty. So this is what I have understood from the department faculty. Bring live problems will largely promote industry-institute interaction for mutual benefit. Mutual benefit because, particularly if we spread it to engineering institutions all across the country, engineering faculty as well as students will be able to understand the practical problems in industry, whereas SMEs located in even in the hinterlands, they'll be able to get cost-effective solutions from the engineering faculty. To a large extent, it will improve, it will be a win-win situation. So if we promote that industry-institute interaction that way, so I would say SME innovation also may emerge, and this may even encourage entrepreneurial emergence for new ventures from engineering institutions. Some students who have successfully solved a problem may get tempted to become an entrepreneur subsequently. Now, it is with that that I would like to conclude. Now, these are the 7 points that I would like to read out. In the ever competitive global economy, enhancing competitiveness has become absolutely essential, and technological innovation is the means to acquire and sustain competitiveness at the firm and industry levels, as well as at the national level. The manufacturing industry has been at the forefront of spearheading innovation, and SMEs are the seedbed of innovation in the manufacturing sector, as argued quietly. But all SMEs are not innovative. They cannot be innovative. They cannot be innovative because SMEs, a significant chunk of SMEs, they work in silos, and innovation does not occur in silos. So in a way, SMEs have to move out of their silos and they have to interact. They have to develop networks. So SMEs which have the threshold level of internal competence and which are move out of their silos, they can supplement it with external support for undertaking innovations. And external support through vertical and horizontal linkages can play a decisive role in SME innovation promotion. And to this extent, or towards this end, we need to build or promote regional innovation systems in all industrial clusters for a boost in this direction. Now, we have about 688 SME clusters according to the Ministry of MSMEs, and majority of them are located in Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities. While Tier 1 cities like Bangalore, it has its own vibrant regional innovation system. Tier 2 cities are merely industrial clusters. They are unlikely to have their own industrial regional innovation system. It is there that we need to build, we need to promote regional innovation systems to promote interaction between industries and institutes for mutual benefit, of course, but in this particular context, for the benefit of SMEs. So SME innovation, because if SMEs become innovative through developing networks, they will also be able to achieve internationalization. They will be able to enhance economic performance and thereby competitiveness enhancement, both for the firms and the national economy. So the innovation potential of the vast and growing SME sector of our country must be exploited as a means of accelerating India's economic growth and competitiveness. The essence of my talk is, it is not enough if SME sector merely grows. What is important is we need to encourage their competitive growth. If we have to encourage their competitive growth, we must enable them to come out of the shell, to come out of the silos, and they need to develop networks. But then they will not be able to develop networks on their own. It is here that intervention by the policymakers is required to promote them to develop networks. To develop networks also, they need appropriate, efficient network partners. So once they develop networks and carry out innovations, they'll be able to understand the value of the product innovations, process innovations, and then they'll be able to grow, maybe through internationalization or maybe merely with respect to domestic growth. It is with this statement that I would like to conclude my presentation. I'm very happy to make an attempt to answer questions from your end.
Thank you so much, sir. This was indeed an informative session. The floor is open for Q&A. I would request all kindly do not leave webinar. At least kindly share your question, query, feedback, compliment, and then leave the webinar. I would request Dhaneshwar Kambale, if you can put on your camera and share your question, please.
Thank you, Chintan sir, for allowing me to put my question. So as sir has said that, is going to spend few minutes on the intellectual property registration and the SME. So would like to hear from him.
No, see, I will tell you, it's a global trend. SMEs in general, they do not go for obtaining patents or protecting their intellectual property. Now, I have the fieldwork experience even in Northeast England. They do not go for protecting their patents because they do not want undue attention and undue publicity to their innovations. Even in Northeast England, to my surprise, when I interviewed several engineering sector SMEs, they said, look, it is through word of mouth that we get market and we grow that way. So, whereas if we unnecessarily go for obtaining a patent, then our company and our product gets undue attention and somebody will try to copy it in some way or the other. So the patenting culture is virtually absent, and it is more so in the Indian context as well. Now, to substantiate this, I will tell you, we have a Karnataka Council for Technology Upgradation in Bangalore. Now, when I approached them some time back, of course, long time back, it's say about 10 years back or so. But please note, KCTU was formed in 1997, and by 2010 or so, 2011, if I'm right, or maybe 2012, hardly a few SMEs have actually sought their sought their financial support for obtaining patents. So by and large, SMEs do not go for patents. Partly also maybe because they are not confident of their innovations and they are not willing to expose their innovations to a third party for an assessment. So there's a problem. So, and it may not, scenario may not change that easily unless and until some strong external intervention occurs.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We now move on to Debraj. Debraj, can you please share your question? You can put on your camera, that would be great. Debraj, are you there? Debraj?
Yeah, it's a pleasure, sir. It's an excellent. I joined late, but the 10 minutes I was listening you and you have explained very nicely the challenges and the solutions. And the last part, what you have mentioned right now, is a challenge for the SME. Yes, it's absolutely true that SME are never gone for the patent. Uh, Rather, I'll say that they are not having a knowledge how to file the patent. That's my experience. You can highlight your views on that.
No.
But my concern, I have a one concern on MSME. We are in during this pandemic times. I was personally working with a lot of MSME partner, along with a lot of you may be knowing that invoice bill discounting exchange like Invoice Smart and Invoice Smart. There's a 3-4 exchange RBI has approved it. All these exchanges, they are not willing to give the registration to the MSME. That's the challenge I faced personally, because I have a almost more than 8,000 MSME partner network in my distribution business. And whenever we approach to the exchanges, they come out with some silly points and they said, no, I cannot do this partner, I cannot do that partner, this document is missing, this document is missing. And MSME people, MSME partner are facing a lot of challenge on that. So I just want your view on that side.
Yeah. I would say I'm helpless. Brief. No, it is difficult actually. No, administrative wrangles, I don't know how to overcome. This is true. If you go to every region in the country, everywhere SME owners, they face problems of various kinds, including highly educated entrepreneurs, I would say, in fact. In fact, I have come across a of IASC. So he was telling me that repeatedly, I'm talking about the excise days. So he used to he was periodically troubled by these people. Then he came to an understanding with them that he will send the bribe to them every month so that they will not visit his unit. So this is, I'm just giving you one example. So I would say the administrative machinery problems, corruption, we can write stories after stories, but it will be never ending. And so my focus is mostly on how to enable them to network, how to enable them to innovate, how to enable them to internationalize. So that way, how they will be able to contribute better to the national economy. That is the primary focus. That patents, I don't know whether you have made reference to patents. See, even in some cases, what I found is there were two postgraduates, that MTechs in Mysore, who are running an enterprise successfully. They started a small scale firm. It has become a medium firm. They have innovated several products. They have obtained patents on their own. But when we approached them, they were not aware of the very existence of Karnataka Council for Technology Upgradation. So even educated entrepreneurs, mainly because they do not want to go anywhere near the government. Because their feeling is going near the government official means getting into troubles. So they don't even bother what are the government schemes, how government can help. This is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely correct. I give you a classic example. Recently, one of my startup is actually working on the your ER molecule data center concept, and they have filed a patent. Uh, government, the DIPP team and the IP team from the ministry, they said no. This is a very open terms. We cannot do the patent for that. Then we submit. Then we help them to submit the technical documentations. They said we are not founding anything on this kind of thing globally, so we cannot do patent on that.
Yeah.
So there's a controversial things happening actually, because the other side, government side, you are absolutely correct. Sometimes in the government side, who are doing on the IP and the patent, or maybe the registration, I'll say the trademark registration also, they are not knowing the actual rules of the governments. So that
Correct.
is another problem.
Correct.
I don't know. I'm actually my viewpoint maybe differ your viewpoint, but that's my experience I'm sharing with you.
Yeah,
Correct.
definitely. There is a gap. There is a
That is
gap
why
in terms of.
Government of Karnataka provides subsidy to the extent of, I think, 50% or so of the patent cost. Despite that, not many
50%.
approach them.
50%.
That is the problem. Partly, see, that is why one must be well aware of the rules and regulations, and such people must be there at the district industry centers level. So I have one suggestion to the government of India. Of course, nobody will listen to me. That's a different thing. But what I'm telling is that at the district industry center, we need a highly qualified, knowledgeable person to the extent of an Indian economic service officer and an Indian engineering service officer. I'm referring to these two IES because they are better trained, they are more competent, I presume so. So such people at the district industry center level may be able to bring a change and able to penetrate the SME sector in each district for the betterment of the nation.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point actually you mentioned. I think
some SME association only should suggest that. So because I don't know whether IES and economic service and engineering service officers are not there. If you can bring two each for each district industry center, I would say maybe the performance of district industry center improve considerably. That is my feeling.
Yeah, or my say, I have another viewpoint. I think we are going differently, but I have another viewpoint that instead of that, if we can give the IP attorney maybe on the clubbing the 10 or 15 district, okay, or maybe on the state wise. I'm not defining only the Karnataka or Kerala or West Bengal. Because all 36 state and union territory, if we can appoint a one IP attorney on the state level,
Yeah.
I think that will solve a lot of problems actually. That's
Yeah.
my viewpoint.
Correct. But that may not be sufficient. That's what I'm telling. That may not be sufficient.
Yeah,
For
but
the whole
what
state,
happened?
that will be helpful. Definitely that will be helpful.
Yeah, because why I'm saying may not be all economical officer will government will deploy immediately, but at least the district level people can reach to this attorney and seek his help because
In
he
fact,
is a
we have Dhaneshwar. Dhaneshwar is also expert in the IPR domain, and probably he can also share his views. What happens locally, actually, because he has been at the forefront of innovation and actually filing patents himself.
oh
So,
yeah, we can listen to him actually.
Yeah.
so Dhaneshwar, are you around?
Yes, yes, Chintan, and
Yes, sir.
thank you so much. Actually, I will, both the sir and Debraj is right. The first point what sir has said, that SME don't want to get undue attraction, because I will tell you, as soon as you file the patent, okay, the people who want to infringe on the patent, they will file, the litigation, okay, pre-grant litigation, so that you will not get the patent itself. Okay, so the people may not be aware of this, but this is what happens with the good patent. Okay, the best idea to handle is we need to teach SME how to handle the secrets. Okay, secrets by having a proper contracts and other things. Okay, so that is the trade secret. Okay, that is the very important point. The second part will be, if you want to promote the IP, is through the DIC, and you need the person with the patent expertise, but more from understanding, the combination of both what sir has said, the law, because every state will have a different approach and different kind of problem, because somewhere you need to protect as a trade secret, somewhere you have to file the patent. So it will be a case to case basis, and it will have the intersection of your law, from the economic policy perspective, and also from the intellectual property perspective.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I
Thanks,
agree. I
thanks,
agree.
Dhaneshwar. Thanks, Dhaneshwar. Thanks, Deb. And now we move on to Nishant. Nishant, if you can put on your camera and ask your question.
Hi, sir. I hope I'm visible and audible
Yes,
as well.
you are. Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Okay. So extensively, sir, we have been, trying to work with the SMEs across through the intervention of the various government bodies. I personally been, associated with a lot of government bodies, including the small scale corporations and the, district industry centers through DC Industries, and including the Ministry of MSME as a department. So what we have been trying to do is we are trying to listen through the various industry associations, try and jot down the various queries around in terms of the post-COVID scenario, where they are trying to find out whether they are facing any ground level challenges, despite there are a lot of interventions being promoted by the policy makers. Now there are Atmanirbhar Abhiyan and all those announcements have been flashing around, but at the same time there are people who are not in a position to take those advantages. The one of the challenges that you mentioned about is the financial challenges which SME as a segment have been facing right from their startup stage to the growth stage, or to that level, the sustenance stage.
Yeah.
So the issue is the right connect on as you mentioned, on the horizontal interventions that they try and do, either through the SME chambers or maybe any local industry association chambers, and bringing it out to at a right forum to the government forum. So I would like to understand, is there any such interaction has been done in a recent past, or through the ISSC, or maybe through your initiatives, which has benefited any local SME groups?
No, we have not undertaken any such thing because I'm not, as a researcher, I have interacted with several SMEs. But I remember, I think this is more than 10 years back, that government of Karnataka actually promoted an interaction meet between Bangalore-based MNCs and SMEs of the state, mainly to promote subcontracting relationship between Bangalore-based MNCs and SMEs of the state, mainly to promote.
Okay.
But for some unknown reason, it has not been repeated.
Okay.
But I personally feel it should be periodically conducted, mainly because many MNCs, they are keen to look for efficient SME suppliers. And there is some kind of an information, lack of information. So if this kind of events are repeatedly held, it is not that all meetings will produce productive results. Not necessarily. Even if they generate, say, about hundreds of, say, about 50 to 100 relationship, it will have a great impact over a period of, say, about 5 to 10 years.
Right. So basically, you're trying to throw that there should be a more larger stakeholder consultation should be happening on a regular front. That's one part. And secondly, basis that we can also link the LSIs with the lot of MSMEs to bridge that demand supply gap.
Correct. But see,
Right.
in the mid-1990s, Government of India promoted subcontracting exchanges through small industry associations. Now,
Right.
that was the first step. Till then, subcontracting exchanges were only confined to these earlier small industry service institutes. Now it is micro, small and medium enterprise development institutes. But from the mid-90s onwards, small industry associations were allowed to set up their own subcontracting exchanges. So as a result, Karnataka Small Scale Industry Association started its own subcontracting exchange, mainly to promote interaction. However, what impact these association-led subcontracting exchanges have made on the SME sector, no study has been done. And as of now, to the best of my knowledge, what is happening to that or what has happened to that, I'm not aware. But a good number of small industry associations across the country came forward, set up their own subcontracting exchanges. One need to study what impact it has made on the sector, at least in those respective regions. That is not done.
And is there any way where IISc can also participate in linking this gap, if we can understand on this?
Well, IISc has its own, recently IISc has, I think, signed an MOU. I'm not involved, of course. So involved in some SME promotion initiative. I'm not aware. If you visit our institute website, you may know.
Okay.
I'm only an economic researcher, primarily.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Nishant. And
thank you,
now we move on to Priya Madam. Priya Madam, please, if you can share your question. Priya Madam, are you around? Okay, while we get her attention, Pradeep Arora ji, are you around? Pradeep? Okay, it seems they are on mute. Anyway, we move on to Manav. Manav, go ahead and raise your question.
Hi, sir. So one of the questions that I had is you mentioned a lot about networking within the SMEs as well as networking between MNCs and the SMEs. Sir, is there a way that we can privatize this forum or this part?
I did not hear you. I missed your question.
Sir, if we want to say network within SMEs, or if we want to bridge a gap between MNCs and SMEs, is there a way that we can privatize this part?
Privatize what? What do you want to privatize?
So like the Karnataka government held a meeting between the MNCs and the SMEs for their subcontracting. Is there, and you wanted it to happen more frequently, is there private industry experts that can enter this and initiate?
Industry associations can play a role in that.
Okay.
But unfortunately, as I have heard from some SME owners, please don't feel bad. Many of these associations are afflicted with political intentions. That's why some of the associations are not active. So
In fact,
otherwise,
there are a
SME,
couple of private incubators are also available.
SME industry associations are the best platform to promote this. And in fact, one of their objectives, at least on paper, is to promote collaboration with large firms and collaboration within SMEs also.
Okay.
So associations are the best platform.
Okay, sir. Thank you so
But
much.
I don't think incubators can play a role. The very objective of incubators is different.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Pradeep Arora ji, please go ahead, share your question.
Good evening to you, and very informative and very interesting lucid talk by you, sir. And thank you so much for having covered the present situation and you covered important issues of the entire spectrum of what the SMEs are facing and what they have gone through. I am not very much knowledgeable, but one thing which I have noticed over last few years is that any successful organization which
I
is
missed your
technology
question. I
based.
missed your question.
Okay, I'm coming to the question now.
Yeah.
It is that Chinese funding which has been or investment which have been made into our IT based SMEs and which have now grown into profitable businesses. What kind of I feel it's been a threat to our SME growth and startup culture and all, and like they've been capturing the budding and promising startups. I think this trend needs to be reversed. There's some action in this part, but do we have an alternate for financing such
If it is,
budding institutions which need
if
money?
it is financing of startups, while I agree with you that Chinese are playing a major game, there are many venture capitalists, particularly Indian venture capitalists who are from the US, they are coming back and participating. This is one thing. Second thing, in Bangalore and Hyderabad, I have come across some of the tech startups, they deliberately registered their startups in Singapore and not in India because they want to take advantage of this easy visibility and easy funding. So there are different ways that Indian startups, different methods they are adopting. If Chinese are easily investing, then only government intervention can prevent that. Primarily, government has to intervene by facilitating the availability of funds at different life cycle stages of startups. Right now, if you see, Startup India policy is more focused on startup creation and startup stability. They do not support beyond that. But startups have three different phases: emergence, stability, and growth. And when they cross the stability stage and growth stage, the need for funds increases significantly. So it is very essential to ensure that fund availability is there at different stages of the life cycle. And more recently, Government of India, as I understand, has included startup funding under the priority sector. Now, as per the priority sector rule, 40% of the net bank credit must go to the priority sector. That's a good development. So slowly and steadily, banks will be encouraged to encourage. But banks unlikely to play a role in the creation of ventures. That is where seed funds, angels, and VCs come. But banks can play a role once the startups get stabilized and they start growing.
There are some Chinese banks who are possibly scouting around for startups in very initial stages, the emergent stage, maybe giving them seed money, etc., and even technological support. In fact, I was surprised to see even say Big Basket Delhi or not what to talk of, say even Koo. They all had Chinese investors embedded in their ownership. So, is there any bank or any financial institution totally focusing on in making such investments internationally and helping out, I would say, getting ideas, getting the way the startup culture is growing, mushrooming in these countries, and
Actually, I'm
feeding
not
it back to the Indian system.
internationally aware, I'm not aware, but in Bangalore, there's an RBL bank which has set up some branches in Koramangala and other parts of the city, mainly to cater to the needs of tech startups.
Okay. So I think we need to look at protecting our own, and maybe.
I'm also told that biotech startups, they do not get funds that easily. That is because venture capitalists, if they come to know that it is truly innovative biotech startup, they hesitate to fund because they do not know what rules will be framed by the government tomorrow, what will be its fate later. That is why many VCs in Bangalore, they do not get into early stage funding of biotech startups. But I'm not sure whether when Chinese are trying to occupy that space, I'm not sure. Otherwise, tech startups, yes, different means of funding are there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And we now move on to Priya Madam. Priya Madam, please go ahead and share your question, query, feedback. It seems there is some challenge. Okay. Dhaneshwar, go ahead. You had something to add?
Yeah, I just want to request sir that sir spoke about interaction between the local SMEs. So is there a way that SME should also interact with the international SME? Will that bring some new dimension, or new will work as a catalyst in the overall scenario?
Intervention or with active support of SMEs or industry chambers of commerce. Industry, that is, let us say, for example, when I was in SHM has led several trade delegations of exclusively SMEs. Similarly, FICCI may be doing, CIA may be doing, but they are minuscule. At the regional level, I have not come across any initiative where either associations or regional government taking initiative to promote collaboration between local SMEs and I would say foreign SMEs. Such an initiative has not emerged anywhere.
Yes, sir, but is it needed? Do you think it will have a good impact, or it will accelerate the overall scenario?
I personally feel it is needed because I would say we should promote interaction between German SMEs and our SMEs. German
Exactly,
SMEs
sir.
are very much interested to develop collaboration, but there is nobody to hold hands of both. Similarly, Japanese SMEs, yes, by collaborating with Japanese SMEs, Indian SMEs will gain substantially. In fact, their SMEs are declining to some extent. In Tokyo, there is a district called Ota, which was known for a significant hub of highly innovative tech SMEs. But Ota is now virtually getting converted into a residential center. SMEs are either dying down or they are vacating that space and going out of Tokyo. But such
Sir, in
SMEs,
fact, sir, you'd be glad to know that Dhaneshwar, he himself also does a lot of collaboration work with German startups and the startup ecosystem.
very nice.
Dhaneshwar, would you like to mention that?
Yeah, actually, see, whenever this international delegation comes to Nagpur and Pune, so we have this innovation gallery, and we actually show them the innovations or the new system products coming from the MSME. And last time we hosted the German mayor from Baden-Württemberg with his delegation of around 22 MSME representation, and they appreciated to have a digital bridge, and called as a Indo-German digital bridge, because of this pandemic.
Useful
So I
to
was,
get
yes, sir. Go ahead.
contacts also. I can suggest one, Professor Alexander Brem from University of Stuttgart.
Yes, sir.
Professor Alexander Brem of University of Stuttgart.
Yes, sir.
Another one, Professor Roland Haas, who has set up his own tech startup in Bangalore. He will be joining IIITB as a professor next month. He will also be extremely helpful. He promotes relationship between Indian firms and foreign firms. Professor Roland Haas, HAAS, will be joining IIITB next month.
Oh, thank you, sir. I will try to write to him.
Yes, yeah. You may kindly mention my name as well while writing email to both of them. Professor Roland Haas of
Yes, sir.
IIT Bangalore. Just Google Professor Roland Haas, you will get his details. And Professor
Right,
Alexander Brem. In case you need any help, you can also write to me. I will send their email IDs.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, so kind of you.
Great. Thank you, sir. And now we move on to Sudhakar ji, Sudhakar Chilarige ji. Sir, you have any question to ask Pradeep Modi ji? ET sir, please go ahead. ET sir, your video is already on.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure listening to you, Dr. Bala sir, and I would definitely meet you and take all inputs. Quickly to maybe some other small companies also are facing. We are GEM registered, Government E-Procurement Marketplace. However, there are different ministries under which GEM works and also Startup India that works, and then MSME. These are three different entities. The paperwork is so huge, which is overwhelming to us, and we need a dedicated person to work on it. And they don't, they are not in sync. We have done Udyog Aadhar, but there is no credibility for it in the Startup India space, or to claim 3-year waiver for the tax waivers and all this. These are some of the teething troubles the small companies face in India.
The administrative problems, I don't know. Even if I make suggestions, it's of no use. I personally feel so. Government only has to do something. I don't think an academician can change it. He may make suggestions, but who will care? So it is difficult to change their mindset.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And now we just have a last question. Abhay, would you like to share any question, queries, feedback with Professor, sir? Abhay?
Yeah, I think overall it was very good session, but my question is more to do with innovation and SMEs. So innovation, when I see in the Western countries, especially if we see Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, their government supports from the day one, because what they are looking, these countries, when they think of innovation, either they think of their own problem which needs to be solved, or even if we can think of a small country like Israel, where their challenges are different, and therefore the way of working and way of thinking is different, where government supports them in every stages. So that I see is totally missing, even though we have a lot of forums and all this. So that was one thing where the culture, or that thing is not coming out, because we have to solve our problems. We cannot solve America's problem. So we have to innovate for the health, agriculture, or other problems which we have not there. So that somewhere is lacking, I feel, or it's not moving as needed actually.
No, I have missed your question, not completely. I have heard only in between. So I'm not sure
I
whether
feel the speed at which Western countries, especially if you see Germany, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, or US, they help in SMEs or small companies to come out with new ideas, new suggestion to solve their problem and global problem. The same thing, I don't see that in India, because we are more concerned about solving the problems of America instead of our own health problem, agriculture problem, or other problems. So that is where I see. And in fact, last 4 days I was in Bangalore trying to speak to one of the logistic company, their problem, and they are working for 5 years, but they in end he was struggling with a very good idea in the logistic area, but he was struggling with the financial. So
I would say
ideas are there, but the execution and the struggle which is there in Indian environment is quite different than the other countries.
Yes,
either
we
SMEs
echo your
in the
sentiment.
same sector should come together, or SMEs should interact more with government institutions. Several collaborations, as I know, between IASC and SMEs emerged, mainly because SMEs faced problems and to get solved those problems, they approached IISc professors, and that is how the relationship developed. So either it is cooperation among themselves, or relationship between them and institutes can be a solution. Government machinery, I do not think, of course, we can come with one more new scheme or one more policy that may not solve the problem adequately. In developed countries, of course, that I believe in the UK, support starts from incorporation and goes up to the UK government encourages every newly created enterprise to reach the international market. I do not know when we will be able to reach that kind of a status. It may not be all that easy.
Thank you, sir. Kajal, would you like to ask any question? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you so much for giving such different perspective. I have a question which which has always bothered me, but I've never come across a solution. Nobody's ever suggested. So maybe I could give it a shot, and if you want, you can answer that question, sir. So you said that SMEs bring innovation and they're good for the country, and I totally agree. There are so many MSME schemes that are coming day in and day out, and the government is trying its best to promote MSMEs, and it's giving them subsidies in renewable energy sector, because that's I'm catering to, so I know that. So a lot of benefits are given. But sir, there is a very tricky situation which I've come across, and it is so tricky that MSMEs are suffering, or the end customer is suffering. So let's say I'm an MSME. This is a real-time scenario. I'm an MSME because in the current situation, I am supplying, let's say, API. That's one of the ingredients that goes in the medicine to a big pharmaceutical company. Now, because of the COVID hit, the pharmaceutical company is trying its best to extend maximum payment period. Like they're taking it from 90 days to 180 days. Now, to retain my client, I cannot force them. I don't have control over them to get the money out. Like it is what every MSME is facing right now. They are providing services, but they are not getting payment on spot. And for them to continue their operations flawlessly, they need that inflow. So how to handle that battle? What should be the terms, and how can one smartly deal with this situation without losing business? Because if they insist that we want the lowest payment period, then they will shift to another MSME who's providing similar service.
I will tell you, there is no easy solution to this. I don't know whether you know, in 1993, Government of India passed a Delayed Payments Act. But that act did not provide any kind of comfort to the SME sector. Problems continue. And you'll be surprised, okay, that even DRDO, actually, I believe, it delays payment to its own subcontractors.
It happens, sir, it happens.
So, and I was told that if a large firm delays the payment to its SME subcontractors for, let us say, for a month or so, it saves about crores of rupees in terms of interest. So there is a hidden agenda in that. So even an act of parliament has not helped the SME sector. Means what can be done? I do not know. But there is one more scheme that Government of India introduced. I am not getting the name. It is similar to bills discounting. Do you remember? I don't know. Any of you know that? It is.
I have not come across.
Sorry.
I have not come across this scheme.
There is a scheme where you can SIDBI play. This is what I'm not getting the correct name because I'm not prepared for that. Actually, SIDBI has a scheme. You can surrender this invoice to SIDBI, and SIDBI will immediately encash a discounted amount to you. And it is SIDBI's responsibility to collect the final payment from the customer. There is a scheme, but even that has not made a major impact. I do not know why. Unless and until somebody conducts an empirical study, one will not know what impact it has made, because there is no, in the public domain, there is no information about what impact it has made, why this has not led to a success to the satisfaction of SMEs. Nowhere data is available. It's a tricky situation. But SMEs, I do not know how many have actually made use of the scheme offered by SIDBI. I'm not aware.
Sir, I own a few SMEs, like two SMEs myself. So since I'm doing myself, I don't know. I don't think so. It's a very public knowledge that people know about this scheme. But as you've mentioned, this is a fantastic scheme. I mean, if something like this is possible, so I will definitely look into it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. You please talk to any SIDBI official. He may be able to help you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Last question, call for question. Jikesh and Vivek, would you like to share your question, query, feedback? Okay, fine. So we are done with the Q&A. On behalf of all participants, I would request Dev. Dev, are you there? Dev seems to be on mute. I would request Kajal herself. Yeah, Dev, if you can extend vote of thanks to Professor Sir on behalf of everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Chintan. Thanks to Professor Bala. I think it's an excellent session. Though I missed your first part, I'll definitely go through the recording later on. But it's an excellent session, I'll say. And on behalf of the TMI, I acknowledge your time and you spend on time on Saturday evening. So it's an excellent session, and thank you very much, sir. And we have to interact more. I think we should create some kind of a
also has created, led it to new thinking, and I'm sure I will benefit out of this discussion with you, and I will carry forward my research. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
My special thanks to Chintan Oza, who has been instrumental in arranging this talk and facilitating interaction between me and all of you. I'm grateful to all of you for your patient hearing.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now we come to the end of today's session. Have a great evening and Sunday ahead. We meet next Saturday, where we would be having a session on agile manufacturing. So we look forward to meet all of you next Saturday. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.